Kohberger said that he was not going to speak, and yes, they said coward, but I also heard people say kiss my ass, and they were very, very unhappy to hear that he had absolutely nothing to say after their just heartbreaking testimony. So many of them were looking directly at him, talking to him, looking him in the eye, begging for answers, really. And they said they do not know who the target was necessarily in the house. They still don't know why he went to that house. They still don't know where the knife is. They don't know where his clothes are from that day. They said they actually interviewed him. I didn't know that. That was new to come out today. After they arrested him in Pennsylvania, he sat down for an interview, but stopped talking to them midway through.
Yesterday, a huge amount of information, like this huge wave in the Kohberger case, has suddenly become available. Did you know that 2 members of Kohberger's family actually attended the sentencing hearing? They snuck out a rear door of the court with the defense team. And did you know during the investigators' press conference, they claimed the house was the target because they found no connection between Kohberger and any of the victims? Now let's look at 10 shockers from the sentencing hearing, including photos, sound bites, and new evidence we're hearing for the first time.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear. Thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Well, let's get right to it. 10 shockers from the sentencing hearing. Number 1, drawing of a black heart. To some it may seem that Kohberger didn't say anything during the sentencing hearing, but it seems he actually had a message, a sly, cryptic message to everyone watching. On a piece of slightly ruffled paper on the table in front of him, which I thought might be a prepared speech, he'd drawn a picture with a black heart clearly drawn near the bottom, and apparently there's writing on the other side of it. The pen on that piece of paper also seemed to be drawing one's attention to it, as if to say, I've written a letter. At least 2 publications, the New York Post and NBC News, commented on Bryan's bizarre doodle. Kohberger never handled the document, but NBC News provided this commentary on it. Throughout Kohberger's sentencing hearing, a note with a heart on it could be seen on camera, sitting next to him on the defense table. It isn't clear what the note was. Something was handwritten on the back. Toward the end of the hearing, one of his attorneys picked it up and appeared to ask Kohberger about it. So it seemed like he'd purposefully not only written this note, written a message on it, but left it behind. So what was it? A joke, a manifesto, a ploy? And I feel that this was an effort from Bryan to kind of get the last laugh, to have the last word, effectively by saying, yes, I do have a black heart and you'll never know just how black. Ha ha ha. Number 2, the judge urged against trying to understand motive. And this is how NBC described it. Judge urges against trying to understand motive in killings. Personally, I don't think a judge belongs in a courtroom if he isn't interested in the motives of criminals, because that really goes to the heart of these trials. I would say it's part of their job description to know, to care, to pursue it, to at least be curious, and to make an effort. Although Hitler did say that while he shares the desire to understand why Kohberger carried out the killings, he said seeking to understand a motive gives the defendant more power and control. I mean, imagine being in a courtroom and someone's on trial and you say, you know what, I don't really want to find out why he did this. That's going to give the defendant more power and control. Actually, understanding motive gives us more power and control and should give a court more power and control, because then you have a handle on who that someone is and what they were doing, and that dark heart isn't so scary anymore. It's comprehensible and therefore it can be recognized, and similar dark hearts and dark stratagems can be frustrated, foiled, or thwarted in similar criminals in the future. I have to say, I don't share in the same confusion. I think Kohberger's motives are quite clear and quite obvious, but you can only see that if you understand the full arc of his backstory, and most people don't have the time or the stamina for that, and even if they do, they seem to struggle to integrate that, to synthesize that into something cohesive that makes sense. All right, so we are at number 2 of the 10 shockers from the sentencing hearing. Before we get to the rest of the other 8, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button, and let's continue. Now, just coming back to the judge urging against trying to understand Kohberger's motive, this is one of countless cases I've covered where at the very end of a long chapter of legal shenanigans, this arduous process, you eventually get to the end. You get the perpetrator convicted and sentenced, and then suddenly no one knows why he committed the crime. And they need him to stand up and say so, otherwise they won't know. And of course, Kohberger doesn't. And Kohberger not standing up, not saying anything, not apologizing, this did confirm the impression many have of him, which is of a coward. And I think that's true. And I think the crime was in a way how Bryan tried to prove to himself and to others that he wasn't an invisible man, a wannabe, a nobody. He tried to, in a sense, rise over his own cowardice, and of course he failed. Number 3. Cops said they would have caught Kohberger without the DNA. Many people seem to have assumed that Kohberger had a strong defense. Why? Just because that defense went on and on for as long as it did. But it was a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing, wasn't it? And I've never believed that. I never felt the DNA was essential to the case because there was so much more evidence implicating Bryan, not least of which is the fact that he doesn't have an alibi. His vehicle is really what gave him away, and to some extent his phone. And that's besides the fact that there was a witness who saw him inside the crime scene, actually caught him red-handed at the scene, and saw that he was tall and had bushy eyebrows. I think officers also found very large footprints outside in the snow, measured them, and these would also probably match to Bryan Kohberger's shoe size. Number 4, Xana Kernodle was stabbed more than 50 times. Now, I must say, this is really heartbreaking to find out. It's horrific, really. Talking about motive in the context of more than 50 stab wounds, and Kaylee apparently had around 30, I think it is somewhat nonsensical to think or talk about motive, because you are dealing with someone who seems to be going berserk. It seems to be someone who's insensible. But there's more to it than that. Are you really telling me that this is some unfeeling psychopath? Or is this someone who is overwhelmed by an incredible amount of feeling? And each time he stabs, he gets a sense of sadistic satisfaction based on those feelings. What are those feelings? Feelings of humiliation, feelings of rejection, feeling like an invisible loser. That's why there are 50 stab wounds and not 5, 30 and not 3. Because of the sheer amount of feelings he can't handle. Does that make sense? So now, why is it so unfathomable and hard to understand, this unfathomable crime, when suddenly it's now quite obvious when we talk about feelings, when we acknowledge that they must be a factor, when we realize maybe he's not a psychopath? Well, not entirely. I do think there could be another dimension to this, that it's not just someone going into a home and stabbing, it's someone who is addicted to something, both to dark ideas and perhaps fueled by certain substances. Obviously, it's someone with extremely low self-esteem, and this is his way of regaining some kind of esteem through some kind of criminal act. Was Kohberger high when he did this? Was he high when he started entertaining these violent fantasies, perhaps weeks, perhaps months, perhaps even years ago? Did he feed and nourish the monster within with a diet of violent pornography? Well, he wouldn't be the first. But do you see, if we know these things, if we know the why, we can learn to recognize these signs and symptoms in others and, God forbid, ourselves. Number 5, Kohberger was insulted and humiliated several times in court. Well, if you haven't seen the autopsy photos, and I pray you never do, none of us should, then I'm not sure anyone can criticize the family for being angry, even now, 2 years later. I've seen autopsy photos in another case, and it still makes me angry more than 10 years later. The Gonzalez family, each in turn, lay into Kohberger, hurling insults and barbs and telling him he's a nothing and a nobody. This seems to be a theme that they repeat. A lot of people seem to be convinced that these words did nothing to him and weren't getting under his skin. Do you really believe that?
Hello, I'd like to start by thanking the court for allowing me the time and opportunity to speak today. My name is Olivia, and I am the big sister of Kaylee Gonzalez, and I was blessed to love Madison Mogan as a sister too. I'm not here today to speak in grief, I'm here to speak in truth. Because the truth is, my sister Kaylee and her best friend Maddie were not yours to take. They were not yours to study, to stalk, or to silence. They were two pieces of a whole, the perfect yin and yang. They are everything that you could never be. Loved, accepted, vibrant, accomplished, brave, and powerful. Because the truth about Kaylee and Maddie is they would have been kind to you. If you had approached them in their everyday lives, they would have given you directions, thanked you for the compliment, or awkwardly giggled to make your own words less uncomfortable for you. In a world that rejected you, they would have shown mercy. Because the truth is, I'm angry. Every day I'm angry. I'm left shouting at the inside of my own head.
And then about 4 minutes later, Olivia goes on,
I won't stand here and give you what you want. I won't offer you tears. I won't offer you trembling. Disappointments like you thrive on pain, on fear, and on the illusion of power. Some of these might be familiar, so sit up straight when I talk to you. Did you prepare for the crime before leaving your apartment? Please detail what you were thinking and feeling at this time. Why did you choose my sisters? How does it feel to know the only thing you failed more miserably at than being a murderer is trying to be a rapper? What did you bring into the house with you? You wanted so badly to be different, to be special, to be better, to be deep, to be mysterious. You found yourself thinking you were better than everyone else, and you thought you could figure out the human psyche and see through it, all while tweaked out on heroin. Lurking in the shadows made you feel powerful because no one ever paid you any attention in the light. You thought you were exceptional, all because of a grade on a paper. You thought you were elite because your online IQ test from 2010 told you so. All of that effort just to seem important. It's desperate. There is a name for your condition, though. Your inflated ego just didn't allow you to see it. Wannabe. You act like no one could ever understand your mind, but the truth is you're basic. You're a textbook case of insecurity disguised as control. Your patterns are predictable. Your motives are shallow. You are not profound. You're pathetic.
Olivia actually does quite a good job at getting a handle on Bryan, his low self-esteem, his efforts to matter. And so why is it so difficult for the court itself to try and assuage his motives? She does. She finds him, rightly, shallow.
You aren't special or deep, not mysterious or exceptional. Don't ever get it twisted again. No one is scared of you today. No one is intimidated by you. No one is impressed by you. No one thinks that you are important. You orchestrated this like you thought you were God. Now look at you, begging a courtroom for scraps. You spent months preparing, and still all it took was my sister in a sheath. You work so hard to seem dangerous, but real control doesn't have to prove itself. The truth is, the scariest part about you is how painfully average you turned out to be. The truth is, you're as dumb as they come. Stupid, clumsy, slow, sloppy, weak, dirty. Let me be very clear. Don't ever try to convince yourself you mattered just because someone finally said your name out loud. I see through you. You want the truth? Here's the one you'll hate the most. If you hadn't attacked them in their sleep, in the middle of the night, like a pedophile, Kaylee would have kicked your Thank you.
Thank you.
I do think these words were conveyed in some shape or form before the murders, and they stung, and Kohberger wasn't able to transcend them and that the murders were revenge for the social death he experienced. So if you don't know what social death looks like, sounds like, or feels like, well, you've just seen it demonstrated right here. In a real sense, he killed these kids in real life as revenge for the social death he experienced, which he seemed to blame on them either directly, perhaps indirectly, or symbolically. So if the motive was sex, yes, it was also about power. And in the courtroom, we saw that on full display. How to strip someone of their power in a social setting to the applause of everyone in the gallery. Well, that's exactly what Bryan Kohberger was trying to do. Strip someone else of their power and kind of get a boost, a sense of satisfaction of that in the process. I couldn't help thinking that this was a Colosseum type scenario where the gladiator in a way is the person reading the victim impact statement, and this is all to the rousing applause of the people in the gallery.
I think he knows what Rome is. Rome is the mob. You conjure magic for them and they'll be distracted. You take away their freedom and still they'll roar. The beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate, it's the sand of the Colosseum. He'll bring them death, and they will love him for it.
And now think of these words in the context of a classroom, in the context of a social setting, in the context of not actual death, but social death, which is really social humiliation. In another Colosseum, that of X, formerly Twitter, they loved these insulting slurs, with some posts getting hundreds of thousands of views. People on social media were delighted to see Kohberger being called a joke. Meanwhile, surviving roommate Bethany Funk's victim impact statement was read. She said that she didn't know what happened and would have called 911 immediately if she had. She also talked about how cruel social media was about her. For me, it's kind of ironic because you have one victim complaining about being bullied and accused and humiliated by social media, and the next you have someone being bullied and humiliated in a courtroom. Does no one see the irony in that? I mean, is the answer to being bullied and victimized and humiliated to bully, victimize, and humiliate? Someone actually compared the victim impact statements read in court to Kohberger being roasted as if this was some comedy show aimed at getting the best laughs, not the epilogue to a quadruple murder trial. I've been in many courtrooms where the judge would not have allowed applause, and had I been the judge, I wouldn't have allowed it. Is a courtroom a circus, a mob? Is it a place for popularity, or is it a place for seriously dealing with serious matters? Based on the applause we heard in the gallery, it seems what people want courtrooms to be is a Colosseum, is a sort of mob justice. Is that what you want? What would you like it to be? Would you prefer social media to take over the role of the court? Are you finding it enjoyable, even entertaining? Well, guess what? It is. That mob rule is winning. While point number 5 has actually taken quite a long time, I think we'll resume with the remaining 5 points, starting with Dylan's heartbreaking statement in the next analysis. Please do let me know what your thoughts are about these issues in the comments. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.